Number 4, you're going to have to graph using transformations. So the graphs that you'll be responsible for knowing would be the graph of, I'm going to do them down here, give you little sketches real quick before we do this one. You have to know that your x squared graph looks like this. Your x cubed graph looks like that. Absolute value x graph looks like a V. And the last one is square root of x, and that's going to be the one that looks like this. These are the only 4 graphs that you'll be responsible for knowing. Don't worry about the cube root, that's not going to be on here. So these 4 graphs, you're responsible for knowing what the shape looks like. So I want to make sure you understand just these 4 graphs only. The problem on the test for number 4 is going to end up being one of these 4 shapes. So besides the versions that you have here on the sample test, make sure you know how to do the other ones there. Make sure you know how to do graphs with all these with transformations. So these are the ones that you want to know how to use. Now the very first one, the second one rather, we're going to use is the one for this, the cube graph here. So now that one's going to look like this shape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a couple reference points. Okay, so I'm going to put some key points in there, which you should also know with these graphs as well. So not only the shape, you should also know the key points, because these are the ones that we're moving when we do this one with transformations. The first one's always going to start with the base graph, and then these other graphs, we're just going to show the successive transformations for each one, so step by step to get to the final answer. Okay, now this one, here is where the points that we have on this one, so I'm going to go ahead and label these for you. It's a little small here, but you should have that on your handout. You should, on your notes, you should see what the key points are going to be. So what they are here, I'm going to label them 2, 8, 1, 1. 0, 0 goes through. This other one's going to be -1, -1, and -2, -8. So I want you to have those as the key points. You need those on this particular graph. Now, what's going to happen is we want to apply one of these transformations. So I'm going to label these all the way through which one we're actually doing. This is the graph of y equals x cubed. Next, we're going to apply one of the transformations. The one I'm going to do first is going to be this one here. So the -2, we'll start with that one. The next one I'll do is a negative I'm going to apply to that one. So I'm going to do a negative out front, x minus 2 cubed. And then finally I'm going to do the whole thing. Okay, so now this one says we want to find x minus 2. So you're going to move everything over 2 places to the right. From where it was. So this original point was at 0, 0. We're going to move it over to here. So move it 2 places over. So in fact everything is shifted 2 places over to the right. That means at this point here that was at 2, 8, it's now going to be over here at 4, 8. The one that was at 1, 1, that moves over 2, now it's going to be at 3, 1. This point was at -1, -1. If we move it over 2 places, we're going to be at 1, -1. And finally, it was at -2, -8. We move it over to here. It's actually going to be on the x-axis there. So it's going to be at this point here. So we're going to do that one right there. So it got shifted over 2 places to the right. Next, we're going to apply a negative sign. Now what the negative sign does, it's going to take this graph and flip it over the vertical axis. This point right here is going to be our pivot point, which means the graph is still going to go through that exact same spot right there at 2, 0. However, the graph flips, which means that the point that was originally at 4, 8, that's going to get reflected over to here. So now that's the one that's going to go through y-axis there goes through that point. Next, this point right here at 3, 1, that gets reflected over here to 1, 1. And then these other points, this one was here, that's going to move over to there, so 3, negative 1. And then finally, the other one's going to be out here at 4, negative 8. Was here, but it moves over to there. So the whole graph gets reflected over like this. Okay, so that's what the third one's going to look like. And finally, we have minus 1. So what that means is the whole graph is going to shift down 1. So let me move this up here so we have space to put that in. Okay, so here is the what'll happen to that one. The whole graph is going to just move 1 down. So everything's going to stay in the same x value, but everything else gets shifted down 1 unit. So originally it was at 8. Now this is going to go down to 7. This one was at up at 1. Now it's going to cross through here, cross through the axis right there. This is at 2, 0. Now it's going to go to 2, negative 1, right there. And then this one was at 3, negative 1. It'll be now at 3, negative 2. So 3, negative 2. And then finally this last one was at 4, negative 8. So now it's going to be at 4, negative 9. So 4, negative 9 will be right there. So now we're going to draw on this graph that looks like this. And this is what your final graph will look like. So we've shown each successive transformation.